Hi, Paula.
Hi.
Hello. Good night.
Shall we start, Rekha ma'am?
Good evening, Hemant sir.
Hemant sir is there. Just a minute.
Yes, madam. I think we can start.
We can start.
Yes. Let me record the session.
Okay.
Yes, madam.
Shall I start?
Yes, madam.
Good evening, respected seniors and colleagues. Welcome to this session organized by NCDPA for World Obesity Day. The topic for today is Role of Yoga and Enhancing Mental Well-being and Resilience in Children and Adolescents. Our speaker is Dr. Hemant Bhargava from NIMHANS. Thank you, sir, for allowing us for attending this and giving us this talk and for allowing us the use of your Zoom platform. So I now welcome Chairperson Dr. Rekha Harish to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paula. Esteemed Dr. Shivarama Varambaliji, Head Department of Integrative Medicine, NIMHANS, Bangalore. Dr. Hemant Bhargavji, Assistant Professor in Department of Integrative Medicine, NIMHANS. My seniors and my junior dear colleagues from Indian Academy of Pediatrics, office bearers and members of Non-Communicable Diseases Prevention Academy, and our most valuable viewers, our children. I bring greetings from NCDPA, which is a subspecialty chapter of Indian Academy of Pediatrics. I wish you all a very good evening and just wanted to remind you the havoc which was created by the COVID pandemic recently has not only urged the world to relook into our lifestyles, but also understand the importance of mental health along with physical well-being. When we talk of mental plus physical well-being, yoga, which is our representation of our traditional culture, assumes the highest significance. It's known not only to improve the muscle strength, it improves the physical flexibility, the cardiac and lung functions. It also improves the ability to concentrate, to maintain a longer attention span, and works as an antidepressant, a mood elevator, and a de-stressor, and assists in improving our planning and execution skills due to its innumerable sensory motor benefits, coming at no other cost except for determination and dedication. We all need to apply principles of yoga for maintaining our own physical and mental health so that we are able to help the younger generation which is coming in our contact in our daily practice. To follow the same, NCD chapter is really blessed to have none other than Dr. Hemant Bhargava, who has kindly consented not only to apprise our esteemed audience regarding the benefits of yoga in improving mental resilience and physical health, but he will also talk about the scientific basis behind the yoga practices and provide an orientation to the upcoming yoga course for mental well-being and resilience for pediatricians of the country, which will be beginning from 7th of March every Monday to Friday from 6:50 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. We are also blessed to have the auspicious presence of Dr. Shivarama Varambali, who is not only a professor of psychiatry, he is DSc in yoga and heading the Department of Integrative Medicine. For this noble venture by NIMHANS, I invite him to bless us all with his valuable guidance and words of wisdom. It's also pertinent to mention that NIMHANS is the first department of integrative medicine in a government medical college in India. Here, the conventional and the traditional systems of medicine, they work in synergy based on strictly scientific approach. I welcome Dr. Shiva Rama for his keynote address.
Thank you, madam. I'm very grateful to the society for calling us in the first place. We got in touch with the pediatricians during the COVID pandemic. Dr. Galgali we contacted us, and we ran actually a series of classes for the children during the pandemic when they were all stuck at home. And then we also realized that we need to actually talk to other physicians about it. In fact, the Indian Psychiatric Society, the yoga and chapter is now working with the Endocrinology Society of India, I think the body of endocrinologists in India, and every year we are running a conference on mind-body medicine. Particularly, I think in the field of medicine, yoga has a very important role. Unfortunately, over the years, yoga has become more of a ritual and less of a science. We need to reverse that trend, and we need the doctors from pediatrics, medicine, other people to do scientific work rather than some kind of a very mystical reputation that yoga has got. We need to reverse that. So as you mentioned, madam, in Nimans, we are very lucky to have had a very supportive administration, we have been running the yoga center for 15 years now, and now it has been converted into a department of integrative medicine, where we have modern psychiatry, Ayurveda and yoga together. So we are trying to, this is a kind of an experiment. I am told that all the AIMS also will start doing that in a few months or years. So hopefully this is the beginning of collaboration, because overall everything is now NCD, whether it is depression or whether it is obesity, it is diabetes. These non-communicable disorders are the pandemic of this century, and we all need to work together to find a solution. Thank you very much, madam. I wish Hemant all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I now welcome Dr. Anil Sood, Secretary of NCDPA, to say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Paula. Yoga is an art as well as science. Yoga is an art and science of healthy living, which focuses on bringing harmony between mind and body. We are proud that it has originated in our own Bharat and is now acclaimed all over the world. It is important for children as well as for adults. And children are new to stress, and yoga teaches them how to release stress and anxiety, sleep better, and improve emotional regulation. And with these words, I welcome Dr. Shriram and Dr. Hemant Bhargav, and thank Dr. Bhargav for conducting this session and also agreeing to start the yoga course for our pediatricians. Dr. Paula, I request you to take forward the proceedings.
Thank you, sir. And I now welcome Dr. Preeti Galagalli, our adolescent expert, to say a few words and introduce Dr. Hemant Bhargava so that he can continue the session. Over to you, Dr. Preeti.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paula. It's a pleasure indeed to introduce my teacher, Dr. Hemant Bhargav, to the audience. Dr. Hemant Bhargav is the assistant professor in the Department of Integrative Medicine at NIMHANS. He did his undergraduation from Indira Gandhi Government Medical College, Nagpur. He also holds a diploma in community mental health, and he's an MD and PhD in yogic sciences from S. Vyasa University, Bangalore. He's a teacher par excellence for the past 10 years. And he has a number of research publications. And to say the numbers, 101 research publications and 2 books of yoga. His research interest is yoga neuroscience, the brain hemodynamics, and the functional MRI. He is a member of the Research and Academics Task Force of the UGC. He is also a member of the Prophylactic Ayush Guidelines for children during COVID-19 pandemic, the Tele-Yoga Guidelines, and the Manas Mitra webinar series. He is also a distinguished member of the Society for Neuroscience of the United States of America. He is involved in a number of funded research projects, and to name a few, Welcome DBT India Alliance Early Career Fellowship, an ongoing funded project of yoga for opioid dependence. He has finished his research projects on yoga for type 2 diabetes mellitus, yoga at workplace, and mobile phone induced EMF and trans-diagnostic approaches in psychiatry using yoga. He has won many awards. To name a few, he has won a gold medal for the best MD and the best PhD thesis. He's also won the ICMR Travel Award to the Society for Neuroscience at United States. He received the Promising Young Faculty Scholarship from North Carolina just last year. And to share a few personal points about Dr. Hemant Bhargav, I've known him for the last 2 years as a very learned teacher, as a wise doctor, and a human being who is so very empathetic and sensitive. Over to you, sir. We all look forward to listening to you.
Requesting other participants to mute themselves, except the speaker.
Thank you very much, Preeti ji. I thank the Indian Academy of Pediatrics and the Non-Communicable Disease Prevention Academy, especially Dr. Rekha Harish, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And now I will start my presentation. I will share my slide. So this presentation, which is of 1 hour duration, there are basically 2 objectives. One is to sensitize the pediatricians of the country about the role of yoga, the clinical role that yoga can play in improving the mental health and resilience of children. And second is to orient you all to the upcoming course that we are specially organizing for the pediatricians in the country. So in this presentation, I'm going to answer some specific questions. One, of course, is what is yoga? As our HOD, Professor Shivarama, was saying, whether yoga is scientific or it is a mystical practice. How does it work scientifically? And then, can yoga play a role in enhancing mental health and resilience of the children? And if yes, what kind of yoga techniques, are advocated for this population? And what are the indications and contraindications? What are the preparations required for a yoga practice? And then at the end, all of us will practice a very brief 10-minute kind of a yoga capsule, which can instantly relax the mind and improve the quality of sleep. So this is the overview of my presentation. So what is yoga? Recently, in the last 2 decades, yoga has become very popular. From 2015. Thanks to our Prime Minister, the whole world is now celebrating the International Day of Yoga, including many countries, who follow different religions. So that shows that yoga has something which is scientific and beyond religion. Now, yoga, if you look at the history, the first mention of the word yoga was there in Rig Veda 10,000 years ago. Then came the sage Patanjali in 400 BC, who gave yoga a very systematic approach, a 8-limbed approach. And after that, Swami Vivekananda was the first person who took yoga to the West. And then Iyengar, BKS Iyengar, popularized the physical dimension of yoga. So unfortunately, with us, what happens is that what belongs to us is not valued much unless, it is stamped by the West. So it has to go to West, then West has to acknowledge it. And then from US, then the yoga becomes popular. And then, so in whole this packaging and repackaging, what happened is the essence of yoga was lost. So these are the teachers. And now what we understand is that yoga, most of the people, when we say I do yoga, the image that comes in our mind is Shilpa Shetty doing some kind of yoga postures, a very thin, lean person performing some complex postures. But this is very important to understand that yoga does not mean yogasanas. In fact, in the West, if you look at all the researches, yoga and meditation are treated separately. They call it as yoga as something physical and meditation as something related to the mind. But this is not so. If you look at the traditional understanding of yoga, in fact, our HOD Professor Shivrama Varamvalli says that calling meditation as separate from yoga is something like telling that mathematics is separate from physics. So meditation is an inherent part of yoga, and this is the 8-limbed approach prescribed by the sage Patanjali, which suggests that yoga has some behavioral components. Yamas and niyamas are the behavioral codes. The yamas are the things where individual tends to spend a lot of energy in controlling the instincts, whereas niyamas are the directions in which the energy should be naturally channelized. So the yamas should be adopted. They are the brakes, and niyamas are the accelerators. So you have to take these approaches. Once there is a regulation of the lifestyle, then we see that the asanas, and the first thing is to stabilize the body, to make the body fit enough so that it can sit still for a longer time. And then we go towards the pranayama, the stabilization of the breath, then the calming down of the sense organs, internalizing of the consciousness through pratyahara, and then comes the antaranga yoga, the direct approaches of focusing, defocusing, and transcendental. So therefore, Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras specifically defines yoga as something that is focused on the mind. He says, yogaha chitta vritti nirodha. So it means that yoga is something that calms down the agitations in the mind. And yoga is the technology. The word yuj is the root from where the word yoga comes, which means to connect. So yoga is the technology which can unite the whole world, especially in this crisis situation, where humanity has almost reached, a point where the world can end anytime. So there is a need for a technology which can unite human beings once again. And here our ancient seers have come up with this kind of understanding. And the next sutra says, Tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. Through yoga, the seer establishes himself in his own true nature. And what is our true nature? Our true nature is Sat, Chit, and Ananda, a nature of infinite awareness, infinite existence, infinite bliss and knowledge. So it is here that we all have to establish by the practice of yoga, according to our sages. So fundamentally, Patanjali's approach uses the social conduct, bodily postures, breath regulations, various mind-related techniques and sense organ control, ultimately act calming of the mind. Therefore, we can say that yoga actually addresses all the levels, prescribed by the World Health Organization, and it brings a well-being at all the levels of existence. Now, coming to the next question, is yoga scientific? So in the last 2 decades, if you go to PubMed and you put a word yoga, now you will see more than 6,500 publications exploring different dimensions of yoga. Some studies have explored the asana, some have explored the pranayama, some have used the integrated yogic approaches, others have used meditations. But overall, this slide summarizes that the major mechanism through which yoga works is downregulation of the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis, and thereby reduces the cortisol levels. It reduces the stress from the cerebral cortex level. It also acts on the hypothalamus, thereby bringing a balance, in the autonomic nervous system and bringing a state of parasympathetic dominance, the relaxation response. Studies also show a regulating capacity of yoga on various neurotransmitters of the brain. Probably the central mechanism through which yoga works is by enhancing the GABAergic tone. whereas peripherally, the top down is the GABAergic mechanism, whereas the bottom up is through the increase in the vagal afferent pathways. Studies have also demonstrated that yoga has neuroplastic effects, and especially in elderly population and in people suffering from depression, we were able to demonstrate that it enhanced the brain-derived neurotrophic factors. Now in children also, this is the age, when the neuroplasticity plays a very important role after 7 to 8 years of age, when the pruning of the neurons takes place in the adolescent age. If yoga is adopted as a lifestyle, we can prevent a lot of problems. Yoga also has a regulating effect, the optimizing effect on the immune system, where on one side, systematic reviews show that it has an anti-inflammatory effect, and on the other side, it can also prevent an escalated, out of control autoimmune kind of responses. So ultimately, we see that it has differential effects on different brain areas, on different brain circuits, and also it enhances the vagal tone. Ultimately, researchers say that if you look at the effect of yoga, especially on the mind, then these are the outcomes. It has an effect in reducing depression. In fact, recent trials, have used yoga as a monotherapy in mild to moderate depression and found them as effective as antidepressant medications. Of course, these were cases who did not have any suicidal ideations. Otherwise, yoga is effective as an add-on. Yoga can also be used to dampen anxiety. Certain specific breathing practices are very useful. In schizophrenia, 4 studies from NIMHANS, including a multicentric trial, have shown that yoga can reduce negative symptoms and enhance, the socialization of the patients. It enhances cognition in selective psychiatric disorders, including elderly population. It also improves quality of sleep and attention. So overall, we know that there are different areas of the brain which have different functions. The prefrontal cortices, the neocortex is the area which sends the inhibitory signals to the midbrain, and the limbic area of the brain where there are a lot of negative emotions. The amygdala is responsible for aggression, disinhibition. And there are selective yogic practices which calm down this limbic cortex, and there are selective yogic practices which activate the prefrontal cortex. So this is very important, especially when we look at the adolescent population, where we know, that there is the maturity of the PFC is still to come, and the lower brain areas are overactive. So there, especially, when they go to colleges and there are exposure, it is this kind of regulation, self-regulation capacity that can come to them through yogic practice itself. So yoga has something inherent in it where you do not need to give any advice. It just has that inherent capacity in its practice itself that brings a person more into the present moment. It makes the person more mindful. So here a journalist came to NIMHANS and wanted to understand what we are doing in this area. She was specifically interested on our research on the sound, the Vedic sound Om. So here in this research, published in 2012, 12 healthy controls went into a MRI scanner, and they chanted the sound Om in the O and Ma in the ratio 1:2. And as a control, they also chanted the hissing sound so that they maintain the same breathing ratio. But the vibratory component of the sound Om was missing in the control. So here you can see that during the chant of the sound Om, there was limbic deactivation. So it suggests that chanting of the Om actually calm down the areas of the brain which generate negative memories, which generate aggression, which generate impulsivity. So a calming, cooling effect of the sound Om was noted into the brain areas. In fact, Om has 3 different components, A, U, and Ma. People come here. In fact, we see a lot of people from different religion, even Muslim population who comes. So we explain to them the scientific way in which yoga works. So if they do not want to chant Om, we just split it into 3 parts, A, U, and Ma, and then they are okay to chant it. So the Vedic text, Mandukya Upanishad, considered as one of the gem among the Upanishads, prescribes that the sound ah was the sound of creation of the wakeful state of consciousness. When the consciousness moves out of the senses, we produce, or the sound ah was the sound that created that state. U represents when the mind projects something in the mental space, the dream state. Whereas ma is exact reverse of the ah. That is, when there is involution of the consciousness, it is moving entirely in the opposite direction, inwards. In our day-to-day activities also, we observe that if we get hurt or somebody hurts us, we produce the sound ah or ouch. So the ah word means in a spurt, the consciousness is moving out. Whereas when we are really enjoying something, or you are having, a dish which you really enjoy, you say, you are going inside and you produce this sound ma. In fact, moms, in India, when the baby wants to sleep, they make them sleep by producing the humming sound. So this has a natural characteristic that it makes the consciousness turn inward. So we use this in our sleep special technique, which I am going to teach you. Whereas if you want a person to be more active, cognitively sharp, if you have a presentation, then the ah sound has more energizing effect. So this was the hypothesis, and through this hypothesis, we actually explored into brain areas what happens with these three sounds when they are chanted separately. And we could observe that when ah was subtracted from ma, the areas of the brain, the prefrontal cortices, the other activating areas of the brain, the sensory motor cortex, showed more activation. Whereas you can see when in the last slide, when there was ma component that was prolonged, there was more of deactivation in different areas. So the task networks become more active with ah sound, whereas the default mode and the resting networks become more active with the ma sound. Similarly, another yogic breathing practice, it is a very popular technique popularized by Baba Ramdev, Kapala Bhati Pranayama. So the Kapala means forehead and Bhati means shining. So I was wondering during my MD thesis, why a practice that involves actually a flapping movement of the abdomen? Why such kind of a practice was given a name as Kapala Bhati, forehead shining breath. So therefore, I wanted to see what is happening in the prefrontal cortices. So this is a device known as a functional near-infrared spectroscopy, which can measure the oxygen flow into the prefrontal cortices of the brain. And I observed that when Kapalabhati was practiced as fast and forceful practice, 100 to 120 strokes per minute, immediately during the practice, there was an increase in the oxygenation of the bilateral PFCs. And and there was no change in the deoxy-HB. So therefore, there was some sense, it is a wonder how the sages understood that this practice would do something to your prefrontal cortices. So this was published in Frontiers in Psychiatry. Therefore, there are selective yogic practices which can activate PFCs. There are selective yogic practices which can deactivate the limbic cortex. So this is the way, the behavior of an individual can get regulated by simply doing the practices. Other very important area, is social cognition, which is very important for children, especially now in COVID times. These are almost 2 years, when our children have not gone to schools or colleges, and they are missing a very important part, of their life, the social connect. So here, there are mechanisms. We have been able to demonstrate that yoga increases oxytocin level by 8 weeks of regular practice. A yoga module for 1 hour per day, 5 days a week, done for 8 weeks, enhanced oxytocin levels. It also improved something called as mirror neuron activity. So mirror neurons are located at the base of the frontal cortex. They are exclusive only to the primates, and they get activated whenever we imitate anything or we see any activity happening also. So these neurons are implicated, in schizophrenia, in autism, where children cannot imitate. So here it is very important. Similarly, Mehta et al. Could come up with this kind of mechanism where on one hand, the meditation, especially the focus, attention, open monitoring, and automatic self-transcending kind of meditation enhance release of oxytocin, strengthen the mentalizing networks, and imitation and being imitated through the postures. It is not only imitation of the postures. You breathe in synchrony. Your awareness moves in synchrony when you do a yoga in group. And this brings a sense of connectivity beyond words. This, in yogic language, we call them as coupling of the consciousness. You do yoga together, you do postures together, you move in a certain direction physically, mentally, and in your breath. You come into a single same phase of your consciousness, and that brings a sense of connectivity. Number of review articles, subjective feeling with yoga suggests that it enhances a sense of connectivity with others, which does not happen when you go to gym or practice gym together. So now coming to the children, today, these are the times when our children are going through a lot of mental stress, as correctly, said by Rekha Madam also, that one thing is when children are at home, they need constant attention. Parents have to work from home, and this has become a lot of difficulty for the parents also, which we can understand. But ultimately, what has happened is the exposure to technology has suddenly increased in the last 2 years, and the addiction to the technology has come up. In fact, now the DSM-5 also has come up with something called as the gambling disorder or excessive use of internet addiction, such kind of terminologies. Nimhan's Department of Psychology has started something called as Shut Clinic, especially for this population. And recently, DST Satyam, Department of Science and Technology, has a special scheme called as Science and Technology of Yoga and Meditation, which funds specific research projects on yoga. And it has funded a research project on technology addiction and its use for yoga to us. And we have validated a module for the same. Another very important thing that has happened during these times is there was a recent research where it was observed that the females, which were from elite families in India, had higher levels of malnutrition and deficiencies of vital vitamins in their blood as compared to the women from poor socioeconomic societies. So this was a very surprising research. And then when the researchers went into detail in the lifestyle, it was observed that women who had significantly poor nutritional value online ordering of the food. So the Zomato, the Swiggy were very active in their routine, and this showed a direct correlation with the level of nutritional deficiency they had. Whereas a poor woman was only eating rice, dals, chapatis, which were cooked at home. So it shows that whatever we are ordering from outside, however organic it may be, it does not have that nutritional value of what we eat by cooking the food at our own home. And the same thing is happening with children. Children are eating such food items, and now with this development of technology, whatever children desire, in a minute it is there at home, and there is a lot of consumption of junk food. Today is National Obesity Day, and therefore this awareness we have to build up regarding diet. So diet is very, very vital, and we have to really look into it as pediatricians and look at it. There are components of sattvic diet, that yoga advocates, where you eat wholesome food, the food items that are seasonal. You take a lot of sprouts and salads into the diet and reduce such food consumptions. So why yoga for children? What is the current evidence base? First thing is that it is very, very vital when the brain is developing that we integrate the body, mind, and breath together, so that the there is a development of an integrated personality as the child develops. So researchers show that attention span, motor coordination, physical strength, balance, self-regulation, and social cognition. These are the important domains where yoga plays a very important role. Similarly, emotional well-being is another very important domain. And I will quickly go through some trials. I have selected most of the trials which have control groups. So here 1 hour yoga per week, led to reduction in the negative behaviors in response to stress and enhancement of the well-being. Similarly, you see that there are a number of trials that show that trauma-related distress, stress scores less frustration and conflict and anxiety. If you look at the self-esteem cognition,
ಯೋಜನೆಯನ್ನು ಅನುಷ್ಠಾನಗೊಳಿಸಿದರು. ಈ ಯೋಜನೆ ಅನುಷ್ಠಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತ ಸಾಲಿನಲ್ಲಿ 1,000 ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
Dr. Preeti, Dr. Bhargava has dropped out.
No, he's come back.
Okay.
He's come back.
Hello, am I audible, madam?
Yeah, now you're audible. You're audible now, sir.
Okay. So, I'm back, madam. I'm back. So the computer that I was talking through, there is some technical issue. They are addressing that issue. So please give me a minute. I'm sharing my slides.
Sure.
ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಶೇರಿಂಗ್ ಏನೋ
Should I go back?
I'm really sorry for the technical delay. Yeah. Am I audible now, madam? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So in yoga and ADHD also, we can see there are a lot of researches that have happened. Especially the researchers show that if a regular practice of yoga is done twice per week, or even there are researchers showing once per week also there are effects. The child symptom inventory showed an improvement, and there were improvement in the attention and inhibition problems. Similarly, researchers have shown that children reported improvement in their cognitive functions, selective attention and reaction times, and also there was an improvement in the CAR scores, the strength and difficulty questionnaires, and the CGI.